Hi Roberto,
Hi.
welcome to Sudeep Audio's channel.
Thank you, Aditya.
You've been in the drumming scene, music scene for over 2 decades. 3, let's make it 4. No,
Not far. I'm not that old.
not that old. So, could you run us through your musical journey and your musical influences when you grew up? What kind of musicians you listened to? What kind of music did you play, etc.?
Growing up, I listened to rock. I listened to pop. I preferred rock. So I had the usual influences, Cream, Hendrix, the Beatles. And then I started getting into Zeppelin, Deep Purple, the entire spectrum of rock. So that was my musical foundation base of what I was listening to input. In terms of playing, I started briefly once when I was about 11, but it was just like a summer thing. My best friend's brother was a drummer, and he had this incredible Ludwig see-through kit, Vista Light. So every time I'd go and hang out in his house, I would quickly take 10 minutes and just go and play around, or just sit down and watch my friend's brother play. So I would just look, and it sparked something. It just lit something inside me, and I wanted to play the drums. So I started when I was 13. I got a second-hand kit, thanks to my parents, and started from there.
You never tried your hand at the guitar or any other
No,
singing?
no. It's always been the drums.
Okay. So, what age do you think was it? Was it the right age to start, or were you too late? Or
I don't think so, because until then I was much more involved in sports and other things, but music was always, it's the first thing I do when I walk into my house. I need to listen to some stuff. It sets an ambience, it sets the mood, I didn't realize it as a kid, but now I do. But it's an integral part of the soundtrack of my life. So, yeah. And I was very clear that once we moved to Bangalore, there was only one place I was going to go for college. And that's how it worked out. I ended up in Christ College, where there's a fantastic music program going on. Just not by the college, but just by the people who were there as the band. So I'd go to the Spring Fest, as a visitor and see this amazing, amazing music being played live. So that was the dream. I'm going to go there. And I did. So I got into the band when I was in my first PU. There were some incredible musicians. It was a great time, a great learning experience, because even though we were just students, as a college band, we were a lot better than a lot of professional bands, because we just practiced so much, all the time. It was our life.
did you have a formal training?
No. The only formal training I've ever had was here in Bangalore. It's not even formal, but I did 3-4 years with T.S. Mani from the Karnataka College of Percussion, where I learned a lot of the South Indian formats, and even then I never played any other instrument. I would do it on the drum kit, and T.S. Mani was gracious enough to understand that and encourage me to do that. So that was the only formal, somewhat formal, style. But everything else has pretty much been self-taught, and just watching and learning and listening and getting inspired by the others.
Right. So what is your first show, on a stage performance?
The first show I ever did in public or?
In public.
Well, it was actually the college day, that was the first time I ever performed on stage. There were about 1,000 kids in the auditorium, and it was a talent week, for them to choose the cultural team of the college. And there was a very good drummer who was already well established in his second year degree when I joined as first PU. And everyone wanted him to play the drums. So I just ran around, and there's only one guy, Madhu, who actually said, okay, I'll play, like, can you play for me? So I said yes. Proud Mary, that was the song. And of course, he was cool enough to give me a little space where I could do a solo. And to cut a long story short, I became the college drummer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you nervous when you went up on stage for the first time? Because in the studio or in a rehearsal room, it's easy to kind of play with friends and.
It's a very different experience, especially when you're doing it for the first few times. It's very unnerving because you're in a very different ambience. You're not used to the sounds. It's suddenly you're practicing in this 10 by 10 room where 5 guys are sweating and stinking, and it's hot and humid and sweaty and loud, and suddenly you go on this big stage, the bass guitarist is 15 feet away from you, and you're like, like what's going on? But the lights and everything, so it tends to distract you from what you actually can do. And that's been a big differentiator for a lot of musicians, because they can be fantastic at home, but suddenly when you put them in a performing space, they just suddenly lose it.
They freeze or something?
Yeah, they freeze. Some people are not comfortable. It depends on their personality, their character, whoever they are. But I loved it. It was an out-of-body experience for me, It's a very, very powerful medium, performing. That's why so many people are prepared to do anything for it, including playing free, which I don't recommend.
Right. So over the years, you had several bands of yours.
Yeah.
And what kind of music did you play in those? And
Well, coming from Bangalore, we were very lucky that we had a very vibrant music scene, and it manifested itself in pop, rock, metal. We were part of the first metal band. That whole phase in life when metal actually came out, we actually caught onto it really early, and it was an incredible experience because it was rock but into 10. So yeah, I can do this. And I was 17, 18, you're just ready to go. So it was perfect timing.
so as a drummer, all these years, have your hands become stronger by playing all the time?
I haven't taken the traditional career route of a professional musician, so to speak. I do not. I was very aware, because of maybe my outlook in life, that I would like to live in a particular way, and if I didn't have the luck of it being handed down to me, I would have to go out and earn it. And I was realistic enough at that point. When I was about 18, 19, I was very dissatisfied with the educational scenario for what the colleges were supposedly educating you for.
It's still not changed. So
Well, I wouldn't know, but I saw that then. And I made very clear decisions about what I would do, what I would not do. And by making those choices, you avoid falling into the traps that I see a lot of people falling into. It could be either they're playing it safe, or too much outside input influencing your decision, how you want to live your life, which is very prevalent, especially in India, because everyone has to decide who you're going to be. And I had the flexibility and the freedom from my parents and my friends, and the circumstances allowed me to make my choices. And I did, so I quit college. I didn't finish it. I didn't see the need for it, for what I was going to do. I was a working professional musician at that time. I was making decent money, but it was still very much in the niche. I was never part of the Indian music industry, so to speak, which was primarily film-based. So that was never my thing.
And you never felt the need to even make
being curious as a musician, you want to go out and try these different things. But as an individual, you also realize your limitations and your capacity to absorb that element of bullshit. You know, so whether you want to fall into that trap and play their game, or whether you want to play your own game.
Speaking of games, you came back to the world of music with a fantastic company called Drumjam, which not necessarily is a gaming company, but it has a lot of value that it is giving to corporates in terms of events and as well.
Well, you know, Drumjam is a manifestation of my entire life. That's how I view it. From all the decisions and choices that I made, you know, from the time I was a working musician, drummer, whatever. At one point, I was very clear that it wasn't going to sustain me on a financial scale with the creativity that I would have liked at that point in my life, because I was raring to go. And I had a couple of opportunities, you know, to go and work in the film industries where you go and do session music for 8 hour, one slot.
One shift.
I did it, one shift, you know, but it made me physically sick because there was no creativity involved. It was just going through the motions of work. And I'm not that kind of guy. So I decided I wasn't going to get into that space. And because of that, I wanted to pursue and play the music I wanted to without having to be financially dependent on it. And that's when I started working, and I started my own company at the age of 19. Again, I just jumped into it because import-export. Yeah.
Okay.
But for me, the disconnect was it didn't affect me on a personal level as much as music did to me. I didn't want to dilute it or prostitute it.
Okay. So Drumjam has been a very, very successful venture where you're one of the biggest kind of owners of a lot of equipment and drumming, percussion.
Yeah.
Material.
I have a lot of baggage.
Yeah. And you own some elements of percussion instruments which is biggest in the world.
I don't know about the biggest in the world, but yeah, at some point, you know, when you're starting off, when you have an idea and then you see it start to manifest itself in reality and it becomes an entity and you see it tangibly becoming something, you tend to go a little crazy and you want to push it as much as you can. So at one point, with the immense amount of growth that we had as Drumjam, we started off with 30 drums. It became 80, it became 100, it became 300. And then at one point I was sitting with my other partners and I was like, we have to have, 1,000 drums. And everyone looked at me and just started laughing. Like, Rob, you're always like this, exaggerating. Like, who the hell in the world has 1,000 drums? So I said, you watch, this is what we need. We need this now. And this was 8 years ago. Today, we have 20,000 instruments. So I don't hear anyone laughing anymore. Enough said.
And just because you're from Bangalore, you're not funded.
No, it was completely organic. Whatever money I made, I plowed straight back in terms of equipment, in terms of infrastructure and people, whatever we needed to do to build a company.
So this drive in you, right from the age of 13 that you started playing drums from, and the business skills you acquired when you started your company at the age of 19.
Yeah.
And people are still kind of,
figuring out their lives.
Licking ice creams in their college
among
bags.
other things. Yeah.
So, how as a musician, there was a business skill that got imbibed in you?
Well, surprisingly, I was living a dual life, like a lot of musicians. You have your day job, that pays the bills, except I didn't do it as an employee. I did it running my own business. So it allowed me to I still view it as a creative process, building a business. A lot of musicians I know, they see it as a bad thing, being a business guy. You're thinking about money. There's nothing wrong with thinking about money. All of us do. It allows you to live. So I was real about it, and it was two different worlds for me. In Drumjam, this experience and this experience came together. It's a powerful package.
A lot of musicians I meet touch upon this point of, I just know music. I don't know anything else. I don't even know how to file my returns for all that.
Yeah.
matters. So
Creative people don't know how to add numbers. Yeah.
correct. So is there something that you would like to suggest to those who are planning to come into the world of music today? That should they also develop some skills, looking at what the business scenario is around us as of now?
The music industry.
Yes.
It really depends what direction you're taking as an individual. Whether you want to, whether you're in the film part, whether you're in the creative ad part, whether you're in the independent part. The foundations and the structure of the industry, the music industry itself, has shifted so dramatically because of digitization, the lack of value that people have for music or musicians in general now. It's not.
Did they have it earlier? I mean,
I would think so. I would wake up as a kid waiting for the next release so I could go out and buy it. I didn't wake up expecting just to download it for free. I would have to earn my money to buy it. There was a value. I washed cars. I ran around. I was running around. I started selling chalk when I was 6 years old to my classmates. I would put packages and package it together and make my own allowance because I wanted to go out and buy my music. So there's a value when you work for something. When you just demand it as an entity and you get it for free, you're not placing much value to it because it's just one aspect or one part or whatever. I mean, I would sit down and listen. I would put off all the lights in my room and listen to an entire album and respect the amount of effort that went into it. You look at the artwork, you read every single line while you're listening to the album. It's a whole different way of connecting with music. It's not like you're using the vacuum cleaner and having something playing in the background. It's very different.
So should musicians learn some business skills?
I think musicians shouldn't just be so lazy and so casual in terms of saying if you want to be very green about it, if I'm going to be focusing on my creativity and I'll be very good, somebody else will come and take care of me. You're living in a fool's world. It happens to very, very few people, and they're used as the examples to bring in more sheep into the industry, because what is music about? It's about creativity and content. So either you can do it or you can't. So they always need the people who can, but if the people who can do this are not being paid, you're crumbling the foundation of the entire future. And that's happened for classical music, that's happened for metal, rock, pop, whatever, all the different formats. And everyone seems to be struggling. And there's a lot of shifts in the mindset of how you have to run your career as a musician. So now you're not just a musician, you're doing the work of 10 other people. You're the marketing guy, you're the promoter, you're on Facebook, you're being interactive, you're writing emails, you're signing contracts, you're talking to your lawyer, and then you're shooting a video, and then you're coming up with an album, and you're expected to give it for free. I haven't figured out the magic, how they're doing it. Good luck to them. But I would advise people coming into it, don't be so naive. Don't set yourself up and put yourself in a situation where you can be exploited. Because you have the choice, if you're aware.
Right. So how are you seeing the music scene today vis-a-vis in the 80s and 90s?
The music scene in the 80s did not exist. It was very marginalized. You had film music and you had the smuggled tapes and whatever else you'd find on the footpaths. And you had the local youth circuit, the college crowd, the bands. And there was Bangalore always had a very vibrant music scene. So it's been there forever. Like from the 20s, you had ballroom dancing, you had orchestras coming and playing. You had that culture here. So that always was there, the live scene. Mm-hmm. Suddenly it tapered down in the 80s. And then it suddenly came up again in the 90s with the advent of MTV, the opening of India, the globalization process started. We started getting MTV that brought in a whole new generation of guys many of which are, performers today in the scene. But But again, it's a very individual choice you have to make. Like, what's going to work for you in the long run? Because we always have this mentality, especially in India, is like, fine, do all this until you get a real job. You know,
Correct.
it's all good to do this in college, but now you get a real job. So most people opt for that option for whatever reasons. You know, it could be real, or it could be imaginary, or it could be forced. But it's a very individual thing. You just have to know yourself, prepare yourself, and know what you're there for. Why are you doing what you're doing? You have to have that clarity.
So for the independent musician today, do you see the environment being positive for them, or it's still a struggle, unlike your growing up times?
I think the parameters are very, very different. You know, the setting, the expectations, what all is going on in the world today. There are different set of issues that the modern independent artist has to deal with, which never existed for for earlier musicians. And the ones coming into the scene, I think they're in a very different headspace of why they're doing what they're doing. And some of them are valid, some of them are not. As always, there's always some good and some bad in all of this. But if you don't have your clear beliefs as an artist, as an individual, you're not going to fight and see it through. And that's what I think is more important. It's not just blaming the situation or whatever. Sometimes you have to go out and create your own situation. So I see the positives being that you have accessibility to all this. You have the world as your market because of the internet. You can market it to wherever. There are no boundaries on some levels, but have the content and the depth to carry it through. It's not just being a flash in the pan. You're also dealing with a very distracted audience whose attention span has come down to like 10 minutes. So you have to do something that's going to say, wow. Otherwise, you're just going to be one of 50 million people. The accessibility of music, the tools of the music trade today has made it a global thing. Anyone can be a musician if they want. But, you know what I mean. Well, I think everyone just should have their own journey and get inspired by themselves and push themselves. I feel very awkward about advising people or telling people things because they've not gone through what I have. So how would it apply to them? And how would I know what their issues are or what they're dealing with to go out and do it? So the best thing is be clear and inspire yourself. That's all I can say. By doing that, you inspire the others.
Great. Thanks so much.
Welcome.